Before we dive into today's intense story, a quick reminder. Over 90% of our viewers watch our videos but aren't subscribed. If you enjoy content like this, take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And if you find this story gripping, don't forget to like the video. It really helps us out.
I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who ends up telling her story like this. Not because I don't believe in sharing pain, but because I never imagined pain would come into my life like this. I was always careful, always devoted. I played by the rules. I believed in love, in loyalty, in us. My name is Alia, and this is the story of how my marriage fell apart and how I decided not to be the victim of it. I met Fahad when I was 25. He was charming, successful, and everything I had imagined my future husband would be. He had this quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't beg for attention but somehow gets it anyway. We dated for a year before getting married, and during that time I saw nothing but kindness in him. No warning signs, no gut instincts telling me to run. Just love. The first few years of our marriage were, honestly, perfect. We traveled. We built a life together. We had dreams we talked about at night while lying in bed. He would call me his world, his peace in a noisy life. And I believed him. Every word, every promise, every late night, I love you. I left my job a year after our wedding because we decided to start planning for a family, and I wanted to focus on my health and our home. He was more than supportive. In fact, he insisted. "Let me take care of you," he said. "You've worked hard enough." At the time, it felt romantic. Now, looking back, I wonder if it was a subtle way of making sure I stayed exactly where he wanted me. Dependent and out of the way, it started with little things. Late nights at the office, business trips that came up out of nowhere, missed dinners, excuses that didn't quite add up. I wanted to believe he was just stressed, overworked. I didn't want to be the nagging wife questioning every move. That's not who I was. I was his partner, his confidant, or at least I thought I was. Then came the distance. The emotional kind. He stopped asking about my day. He stopped noticing when I dressed up. Conversations turned cold. His phone was always locked, always turned upside down on the table. If I reached for it, even accidentally, he would grab it like it was a ticking bomb. Still, I told myself stories, that maybe he was going through something at work, that maybe he just needed space, that maybe I wasn't doing enough as a wife. The guilt, I realize now, wasn't mine to carry, but I carried it anyway. One evening, he came home late, smelling like a mix of perfume and regret. I asked where he had been. He said a client dinner. I asked who was there. He hesitated. Then he said, "Just the usual people." That was the first time I knew he was lying. Something about the way he avoided eye contact, the way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other. It was all too rehearsed. I didn't confront him. Not then. I needed proof. I needed to be sure because accusing your husband of cheating isn't something you can take back. So I waited, quietly, observing. I started checking his car whenever he got back, the glove compartment, the trunk, the receipts he left behind. One day I found a small, crumpled movie ticket in the back seat. It was from a theater across town, a place he'd never taken me. The time matched one of the evenings he claimed to be at a conference call. My heart dropped, but it wasn't enough. I needed more, so I became what I never thought I would be, a woman spying on her own husband. I installed a tracking app on his phone while he was asleep. I copied his cloud credentials. I started checking his messages, his emails, his photos, and then I found it. A folder labeled Project L inside were pictures, him and her, hotel rooms, beach selfies, a restaurant booth where they were holding hands like teenagers, and one video, a short clip where he's laughing, whispering something to her. I couldn't hear what he said, but the way he looked at her. I hadn't seen that look in years. Her name was Lara. I recognized her. She worked at his office. I had met her once at a company dinner. She was polite, pretty, soft-spoken, and clearly she was sleeping with my husband. I remember sitting there for hours, frozen, staring at the screen. Every image felt like a slap. Every laugh in the video echoed in my skull. I cried, of course. Who wouldn't? But strangely, after the crying came silence. Cold, calm silence. Not the silence of surrender, but the silence of decision. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. I wasn't going to scream or cry in front of him. No, that would make me look weak. I needed a plan, a slow, calculated one. I had given him years of my life. He took my trust, twisted it, and handed it to another woman. I wasn't going to let him walk away clean. The next day, I smiled at him like nothing had happened. I asked him if he wanted tea. I packed his lunch. I even kissed him goodbye on the cheek. He didn't suspect a thing. Men like him never do. While he was away, I started building my revenge. Not the messy kind, not the dramatic public scenes. No, I wanted him to feel what I felt, to lose something he didn't even realize he had until it was gone. First, I met with a lawyer, quietly. I wanted to understand my rights, what I could take, what he could lose. It turns out he had been putting most of our assets under his name, but he wasn't as clever as he thought. There were loopholes, and I was going to use every one of them. Next, I started documenting everything. Screenshots, emails, call logs, pictures, dates, times. I kept it all in a folder named Vacation Ideas. He never once clicked it. Then I played the perfect wife. For weeks, I cooked, I laughed, I pretended to be busy with house stuff, and all the while, I was preparing for the day I would flip his world upside down. And that day came sooner than expected. It was our anniversary. 7 years. I knew he'd forget, and he did. He said he had a team dinner. I said nothing, smiled, and watched him leave the house with the same cologne he used to wear for me. I waited 10 minutes, then I followed him. He wasn't at a dinner, he was at a hotel with Laura. I didn't confront him there. I didn't want drama. Instead, I walked back to my car and smiled. That was the last piece of evidence I needed. I took a photo of the car parked outside, the timestamp, everything. When he came home later that night pretending to be tired, I kissed him goodnight and whispered, "I love you." That was the last time I ever said those words to him, because the next part of this story isn't about heartbreak anymore. It's about taking my power back. And trust me, I did. The morning after our anniversary, I woke up before him. I sat at the edge of the bed and just stared at the man I once thought I'd grow old with. He looked so peaceful, so unaware, like a child sleeping without guilt. And maybe he didn't feel guilty. Maybe that was the most terrifying part, that he could betray me so deeply and still sleep like nothing was wrong. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just got up, made myself tea, and started executing the plan I had spent weeks putting together. The first move was financial. I had learned, through my quiet meetings with the lawyer, that while most of our savings were in accounts under his name, the house had been purchased in both our names. Legally, I had just as much claim to it as he did. He thought because I wasn't working, I'd have nothing without him. He was wrong. I began the paperwork quietly. I filed for a legal separation, not divorce just yet. That would come later. Separation gave me time. It gave me protection, and most importantly, it froze certain financial actions he could take without my knowledge. I didn't want him to start moving money the moment he sensed something was wrong. He noticed something was different in me, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. I was calmer, more organized, more composed. I still smiled, still played the role of the quiet wife, but I no longer asked questions. I no longer cared where he was or who he was texting. That unnerved him. Men like Fahad thrive on control, emotional, mental, financial. When they lose it, they don't know what to do, and the more distant I became, the more he tried to test me. He'd come home early some nights, as if trying to catch me doing something wrong. He'd ask where I'd been. I'd smile and say, "Just out." That answer used to come from him. Now it was mine. I started going out more, not with friends. I didn't want word spreading, but I would go to cafes, bookstores, walk in the park. I wanted to feel normal again, alive. I wanted to remind myself that I was still a person beyond this marriage. One afternoon, I walked into a small bookstore downtown and met someone, not in a romantic way, but someone who reminded me that not all people wear masks. Her name was Santa. She was the owner of the shop and had a warm, thoughtful energy about her. We got to talking. Over the next few weeks, she became my quiet place. Someone who didn't know my full story but offered kindness anyway. With her encouragement, I started journaling again. I hadn't written anything in years, but now I wrote everything. Every feeling, every lie, every cold silence at dinner. It helped. It helped me remember who I was before I was just his wife. At home, Fahad's affair continued. I knew about every meeting, every text, every hotel stay. I had set up a backup server where all his phone data synced. He had no idea. I even knew when he was planning to take Laura on a weekend getaway, a villa we once stayed in for our 3rd anniversary. That one stung. But I stayed silent. I let it all happen. Because the silence was part of the trap. And then, one day, the silence broke. Not from me, but from someone else. I received a message on social media from a woman named Sabine. She said she needed to talk, that it was about Fahad. My heart stopped. For a moment I thought maybe it was Lara, but it wasn't. Sabine was another woman, another story, another lie. She had been involved with Fahad months ago, before he met Lara. She found out about me later and cut things off, but she felt guilty and wanted to warn me. At first I was numb. Then I asked her one question. Are you sure it was him? She sent me pictures, screenshots, the same charm, the same words, copy-pasted from one woman to another. He even used the same pet names. That was when I realized I wasn't just dealing with a cheater. I was married to a man who had made betrayal a routine. Sabine gave me everything. I thanked her. Then I added her folder to my collection. By now, I had months' worth of evidence. I didn't need to catch him red-handed anymore. I had a library of proof. So I moved to the next stage. Public exposure wasn't my goal. That wasn't the kind of revenge I wanted. I wanted him to feel isolated, humiliated, but in a way that no one else would see coming. I reached out to his boss, anonymously. I sent an email from a private account, attaching evidence of the affair with Lara, who also worked at his company. Inappropriate behavior between colleagues, especially at a managerial level, was against company policy. The email ended with, "This should concern your HR department." A week later, Fahad came home furious. "They're doing an internal investigation," he said. "Someone sent them photos. Someone's trying to ruin me." I acted surprised. "That's awful," I said. He paced around, blaming jealous coworkers, maybe a disgruntled employee. Not once did he think it could be me. That was the beauty of it. Another week passed. Lara was fired. Fahad was issued a warning and temporarily suspended. His reputation at work took a hit. Promotions he had been aiming for slipped through his fingers. Suddenly, the man who thought he was untouchable realized he was standing on a ledge, but I wasn't done. One night, he came to me, softer than usual, vulnerable. "I know I've been distant," he said. "I've had a lot on my mind, but I want to fix things." I looked at him, silent for a moment. Then I asked, "Is Lara part of that plan?" His eyes widened, just for a second. Then he tried to deny it. "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer. I just stood up, went to my drawer, and pulled out a folder. I handed it to him. "Read it," I said. Inside were copies of everything. The photos, the receipts, the messages, everything. He flipped through the pages like they were poison. His face paled, his mouth opened, then closed again. He had nothing to say. "I've known for months," I told him. I didn't say anything because I wanted you to think you were safe. I wanted you to feel like you had control. Now you know. You never did." He tried to apologize, to cry, to beg, but I wasn't there for his redemption. I was there for my freedom. "I've already spoken to my lawyer," I said. "There will be a formal divorce notice soon. I'm not asking for anything more than my share, but you will leave this house, and you will do it quietly." He resisted at first, threatened me even, said he'd take everything, that I'd regret this, but I had already secured the legal protection, and I had one final weapon. A recorded conversation he had with a client where he made several unethical comments about deals he was working on. I didn't intend to use it, unless he forced me to. Eventually, he folded. He packed his things, moved out within a week, and just like that, the house was quiet, but not empty. Not anymore. It was filled with peace, with strength, with the sound of my own breathing, steady, calm, free. I wasn't the woman he left behind. I was the woman who rose from it all, and I wasn't done yet. The final part of my story was still to come, because healing wasn't just about escape. It was about building something better and showing him, and myself, what true power looks like. The day Fahad left the house, I stood by the window and watched him load his bags into the car. He didn't look back. That was fine. I wasn't hoping for a dramatic farewell. I wasn't mourning anymore. I was reclaiming. The silence he left behind wasn't empty. It was comforting. For the first time in years, I slept without the weight of suspicion pressing down on my chest. No fake goodnights, no lies wrapped in cologne and late-night calls. Just me, honest and whole. But this wasn't the end. I knew healing wasn't passive. It needed action, intention. And I wasn't going to just move on quietly. I was going to build something out of the rubble he left behind. I started with small steps. I took out my resume, untouched for years, and updated it. I reached out to former colleagues, explained briefly that I was returning to work. To my surprise, they welcomed me with warmth and encouragement. Within a month, I had secured a position in a small but respected marketing agency. The pay wasn't extravagant, but the freedom was. Every paycheck felt like a piece of my independence coming home. At work, I thrived. My ideas were noticed. My voice was heard. I wasn't someone's wife or someone's problem. I was me, capable, respected, alive. Fahad, meanwhile, wasn't doing so well. I heard through mutual contacts that he was struggling. His name had been tainted at work, and though he managed to keep his job, he was passed over for every promotion. Lara had blocked him. Apparently, she had no idea about his history with women like Sabine, and when it all came to light, she cut ties completely. He tried reaching out a few times. Texts like, "Can we talk?" or "I made mistakes, but I still care." I didn't reply. Not once. Silence was my final boundary, and I protected it fiercely. A few months after the divorce was finalized, I moved out of the house. Not because I had to, the settlement gave me full rights to stay, but because I didn't want to live in a place filled with ghosts. I sold it and used part of the money to start something new, a small creative studio. My dream, long buried under marriage, now rising from the ground like it was waiting for me all along. I called it Alia Studio. Simple, bold, mine. I hired 2 designers and a junior copywriter, and we started with small clients, logos, social campaigns, event branding. But within a year, we had a strong portfolio and a reputation for quality work. Clients came not because of who I had been, but because of what I was building. One day, I was invited to speak at a women's leadership conference. Me, the woman who had once thought her story ended in betrayal. Now I was telling that story not with shame, but with pride. Not to dwell in the past, but to show others what rising looks like. After the talk, a young woman approached me. She looked barely out of college, nervous, eyes wide with unspoken pain. "I think my fiancé is cheating on me," she said quietly. "I don't know what to do." I didn't give her legal advice. I didn't tell her to stay or leave. I just told her what I had learned. You're not crazy. Your intuition is real. But before you make a move, protect yourself. Emotionally, financially, don't react, plan. Because when you respond with calm and clarity, you take back control. She nodded slowly, as if those words were the anchor she needed. And that was when I knew my story had found its purpose. Not just revenge, not just freedom, but power. Shared, multiplied, given forward. Fahad's betrayal didn't define me, it revealed me. It tore down the illusion so I could build truth. I was never weak, I was waiting, watching. And when the time came, I didn't just walk away, I rose. Months passed, then a year, and one day I saw him again. It was at a friend's wedding, one of those rare social overlaps you don't expect but brace for. He looked thinner, tired, like life had pressed against him hard and he never figured out how to press back. Our eyes met for a second, just a second, and in that moment I saw recognition, not just of me, but of what he lost. He didn't approach, I didn't either, but as I turned away I smiled, because this time I wasn't pretending. I was genuinely, deeply, completely at peace. And that, more than anything, was the revenge he never saw coming. Not rage, not scandal, not destruction, just silence, success, and the unshakable joy of a woman who chose herself. That's how my story ends, not with heartbreak, but with a beginning that was always mine to write.